Matthias and Betsy insisted on having bi-weekly family time. Since their children were getting older and were much more busy, they did not have much quality bonding time anymore. They spent every other Saturday morning watching cartoons in their jammies together. It was the highlight of both Betsy and Matty's month. They loved their children so much it was bittersweet that in a few short years, the girls would be out on their own in the world. All of the family aside from Holly enjoyed family time. Holly thought it was silly and unnecessary to spend time with the family, as she didn't like nor care about. Betsy informed Heidi that Grandpa Norman had finally retired, but was declining in health. Heidi was shocked and worried for her grandpa. Holly detested that Karen lived in her room. The infant woke her up several times during the night and did not stop crying. She was smelly and slobbery, which Holly couldn't stand. Holly never wanted to have children. They were gross and nosy, which was two of Holly's least favorite things. If she couldn't get Karen back to sleep, she snuck into Max and Kevin's room to see if they were sleeping soundly. If Kevin was stirring, Holly placed Karen on the floor of the bedroom and encouraged her to make a lot of noise. If her parents saw Karen in Max and Kevin's room enough, maybe they would change their minds and move Karen in there permanently. When Karen screamed to be picked up, Holly snapped back into her room so her parents could deal with the crying brats. It was not Holly's responsibility to take care of her siblings. She did not agree to have two more useless siblings, so she wouldn't lift a finger to help her parents. She would enjoy her sleep instead. One night, Heidi and Adriana snuck out to the patio to talk about Holly. Even if they whispered in their room about her, she seemed to always know, so they did so far away from Holly's room. Adriana complained about how Holly felt like she was owed Glenn simply because she was pretty. Adriana suggested that they create another scheme to humble their sister. Heidi was in complete agreement with giving Holly a taste of her own medicine. They brainstormed ways to make Holly pay. They agreed that the way to hurt Holly's feelings the most was to make it seem like a boy was interested in her, and then take it back. They played rock, paper, scissors to decide which sister would enact this plan. Whoever won the game would tell Holly that their sister's love interest actually was interested in Holly. This would make Holly think she is won, and she would get her hopes up only to have them crushed by that sister. Heidi won the game of rock, paper, scissors, so she would tell Holly that Glenn was interested in her romantically instead of Adriana. That next morning, Heidi did exactly that. Heidi whispered that Glenn confided in her that he liked Holly better than Adriana. Holly was over the moon about this revelation and thanked her twin so much for telling her. After Holly detailed plans to steal Glenn away, Heidi blew up at her and called her a fool. She came clean that she and Adriana concocted this whole plan to get Holly to leave their relationships alone. Holly rushed to find Adriana and give her a piece of her mind. They stood there for a long moment and stared at one another in complete disdain. Their hatred for each other was much more quiet than Holly and Heidi's, but it had always been. There, Holly screamed at Adriana that she was a naive little girl who did not know the first thing about making Glenn happy. Glenn was so much better than her and would leave her or cheat on her because Adriana would never be enough for him. Holly would be there for Glenn whenever he needed her. Adriana unleashed so many years of pent-up anger she's had toward Holly. She called Holly an attention-seeking cow that has never had a genuine interaction in her life. She doesn't have a boyfriend because boys only want her for a good time, not an actual relationship. She would always be second choice because there is more to a relationship than vanity. Glenn chose her because they connect on an intellectual level, something that Holly would never have with a boy because her head was filled with air. The two girls argued back and forth for a long time. Neither were getting anywhere and were only speaking out of anger. The slander that was being spoken on both ends would stay with each girl for a long time. This type of argument is not something that they could come back from. Heidi finally stepped in and stood up for Adriana. She told Holly that she has been nothing but a bully their entire lives, and she and Adriana did this for the sole purpose of giving Holly a taste of age. own medicine. Holly had tormented them for too long without consequences, and that ended today. Holly had finally had enough of her sisters feeling superior to her. Before any of them knew what was happening, Holly lifted up her hand and struck Heidi across the face. She had felt intelligently inferior to them her entire life. She just wanted the one thing, that she was better than them, which was her beauty and gaining male attention, but they couldn't even let her age. Are they that? After the commotion of the huge fight between sisters died down, Heidi invited Michael over to the Barton residence. Seeing Adriana gain so much confidence in starting a romantic relationship with Glenn had given Heidi the courage to verbalize her crush on Michael. She had been in love with him for years and wanted to finally take that next step and see if he felt the same way. Heidi ripped the band-aid off and blurted out that she had feelings for Michael. Michael mirrored her feelings. Heidi rushed to embrace Michael, and they remained that way for a long time. It was comforting to know that Heidi was not imagining the direction that this relationship was going, that she wasn't delusional in thinking Michael could love her back. The two teens stared at each other for a long moment before closing the distance between their lips and sharing their first kiss ever with one another. It was magical. Afterwards, the new couple laid in the grass together and looked at the stars. They fantasized about their life together after high school. They wanted to go to the same college and build a happy and prosperous future together. They had the same goals and dreams, and they made the perfect pair. After the fight with Holly happened, Adriana finally got over her insecurity of holding back with Glenn and accepted a date with him outside of school. They went to the local carnival. The budding couple ordered ice cream and ate the sugary treat in relative silence. Adriana was shaking with nerves and ate her ice cream so fast that she gave herself a brain freeze. She was clueless of the world of boys. Glenn was a very confident boy and made his feelings for Adriana known soon after the date started. He said that he has had his eyes on her since the middle school science fair when she won first place. Adriana admitted that she didn't think boys notice her. He responded that he has always noticed her but finally gained enough courage to ask her out this year. They enjoy riding the carnival rides together. Although Adriana was still nervous, Glenn easily calmed her nerves with jokes and compliments. They had a fun time together. She never thought she would be the girl that gets the guy, and here she was at the carnival with Glenn Simmons. Glenn tried to impress her with his strength by trying his hand at the hit the bell game. He did well and effectively made Adriana swoon. As the night went on, the new couple spoke about what a potential relationship would look like between the two. Adriana was logistical and was curious how a relationship would look. Glenn suggested that they just do what feels right in the moment. Adriana was not used to not having a plan. She had always been calculated and precise, but agreed to try things his way. Glenn pulled Adriana to him, and they snuggled together on the bench. Romance was still such a foreign concept to her, but being in Glenn's embrace felt like the best feeling in the world. Glenn suggested that they go for a ride on the Ferris wheel. Adriana was scared of heights but agreed to go anyway. Glenn spoke words of encouragement to her which put her more at ease. The view was breathtaking, but Adriana found herself looking at Glenn more than the view. He looked so handsome in the sunset, and she felt so lucky that Glenn picked her out of all the other girls. Glenn pulled Adriana towards him after they got off of the Ferris wheel and kissed her. He had been wanting to do so all night but held back until now for fear of coming on too strong. Adriana was very receptive to the kiss and kissed him back. She felt butterflies in her stomach. Music began playing and Glenn began to sway back and forth with Adriana. It was a magical end to a magical night. This evening solidified Adriana's feelings for Glenn, and she wanted to pursue a formal relationship with him. Ever since Heidi had been honest with her feelings for Michael, they had started a relationship. He came over every day after school and their feelings began to prosper. Heidi was the forward and more confident person in the relationship. She knew what she wanted and was determined to have it. She was very content in her pairing with Michael. Since their kiss, they rarely stopped kissing. They were hormonal teens and locked lips at every opportunity. Heidi never imagined she would be the sister to be nauseatingly in love and affectionate with her boyfriend. She always thought that it would be Holly. She was not upset about being able to kiss Michael all the time though. Betsy and Matty focused much of their energy on helping the twins with their milestones. Karen was much slower in her development, so Betsy spent more time working with her. Matty worked for Kevin when he was home from work, and Kevin took to the task with ease. Matty thought that Kevin took after his brother and had the same determined nature. He worried for Karen because Kevin was far more advanced than she was. He hoped that something wasn't developmentally wrong with Karen. Max was unhappy with the change in dynamic between he and his parents since the twins were born. He was used to being the center of their attention and didn't like to share with his brother. He was around his dad and brother often in hopes of getting some of his dad's attention. His dad was his best friend and he missed him. Maxwell channeled his loneliness by focusing on school. He was not the best academically, but noticed a shift in his grades when he felt forgotten about by his parents. He had to learn how to be independent and how to share his parents with his younger siblings. Kevin was practicing how to walk and stand before Betsy knew it. He was excelling in his milestones and leaving his twin sister in the dust. The younger twins had such a deep bond as they shared a wound together. He tried to play with Karen and bring toys to her since they were on completely different levels in their milestones. Matthias got so excited for monthly brunches with his children and wife. He made sure to cook all of his kids' favorites so everybody enjoyed themselves. He cooked away in the kitchen all morning for his kids. Brunches looked much different than they did years ago. Betsy was unable to sit down and eat as they had two infants constantly needing her attention. Adriana sometimes didn't even bother staying the whole time, which deeply hurt Matty's feelings. Holly and Heidi bickered back and forth. Max was the only saving grace during these brunches, and he sat at Matty's side and was his little buddy. Heidi and Adriana's dynamic at school had changed drastically since both getting boyfriends. Heidi spent all of her time with Michael instead of Adriana, and Adriana did the same with Glenn. They still spent time together at home, but they were both maturing and exploring their connections with their respective boyfriends. Heidi and Michael were practically joined at the hip. Glenn and Holly are in the same music class together. Glenn was learning how to play the piano. Someone needed to accompany Holly's vocal talent. The teacher had volunteered Glenn since he was the only boy that hadn't jumped for joy at the chance of some one-on-one time with Holly. They actually complemented each other very well musically and agreed to work closely together while in music class. Holly had ulterior motives for working closely with Glenn. Although he was oblivious, Holly had been insulted by her sisters and would do everything in her power to humiliate them. She pulled out her best flirting for Glenn. She was surprised at how receptive he was and how readily he flirted back. She was expecting to work harder to turn his head, but it didn't take much. She would keep this in mind moving forward. For now, she would flirt with him frequently and keep him thinking about her. She would make her move when everyone least expected it. Adriana got frustrated when she did not know an answer on an exam. She looked around the room at the other students completing their exams with no issue, and it annoyed her. She was spending too much time with Glenn and neglecting her homework. Heidi found an equal partner in Michael. They were always neck and neck when it came to class rank, and even finished their exams at the same time. They were perfect for each other in every way. It seemed like their academic success was only strengthened with being a couple. They helped each other be the best they could be, and they rewarded themselves for it. Public displays of affection at school was a normal occurrence for them. Holly could not stand to watch her sisters be happy and in love while she herself did not have a boyfriend. She liked to interrupt her twin and Michael because it was amusing to her. The 5 teens became an inseparable group. Adriana and Heidi were reluctant to allow Holly to hang out with them given their history, but the boys insisted that she join. Glenn and Michael had become close friends through dating the sisters and even hung out just the two of them often. Given that 3 of the friend group lived at the Barton residence, this was their designated hangout spot. They utilized the pool often. Heidi and Michael took this time to relax. In contrast, Adriana and Glenn playfully at swimming competitions. Holly took this quality time with her friends to focus on her tan. She lathered herself up with suntan lotion and made sure that the boys were watching her. They subtly fawned over her, and Holly basked in the fact that their eyes were on her and not their girlfriends. Glenn was very playful with Holly. He would flirtatiously splash her and encourage her to get in the water. They blatantly flirted with each other when Adriana was out of earshot. Glenn had always found Holly attractive but never pursued her because he thought he didn't have a shot. He really liked Adriana and had more in common with her than he did with Holly, but asked her out because he knew she would say yes. Flirting with Holly was incredibly electric. They bounced off of each other easily. The attraction was so palpable sometimes that Glenn forgot about Adriana entirely. If he had a chance with her, he knew he would be a fool to let it pass him by. Now that Glenn and Michael were good friends, Glenn shared everything with him. He told him of the flirtation with Holly. Michael thought that he would be a fool to not see where it would go. He was completely loyal to Heidi and their relationship, but he could not deny how hot Holly was. Part of him wanted to live vicariously through Glenn. Holly had broken his heart as children, and he would always have a soft spot for her even if he knew the type of girl she was. They agreed that Glenn would see where things went with Holly if she made the first move. They quieted down about the subject as soon as Adriana walked up to them. She could never know. Glenn was the perfect boyfriend to Adriana in school and always greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. Their friend group had lunches together. Holly considered herself slumming it with her sisters and could easily sit with more popular peers, as she had a mission to turn their boyfriends' heads toward her instead. Lunches were a lively affair. The more time they all spent together, the closer they were. Michael and Glenn were vivacious and funny, and kept the rest of the table laughing and on their toes. Heidi and Adriana gossiped about their normal things and pointedly made fun of Holly under her nose. Holly's words from their huge fight rang in Adriana's ears often, and she made sure to create ample distance between she and Glenn. Glenn was not out of her league, and Holly was not a better match for him. They had a great relationship, and it was better than anything Holly and Glenn would have. Holly and Glenn flirted with each other whenever Adriana wasn't around. Glenn felt guilty about this, but he couldn't help himself. Now that Adriana and Glenn were juniors and Holly, Heidi, and Michael were sophomores, they organized their schedules to have at least one class together. The girls wanted to be close to their boyfriends and each other, and Holly wanted the male attention as often as she could get. In order to have some semblance of sanity, Adriana and Heidi organized double dates with their boyfriend, so they did not have to deal with Holly. These were the times they could really let loose and have fun together. They did not have to look over their shoulders to check on their sister. Their favorite date night idea was bowling. Michael was atrocious at bowling, and the others liked to poke fun at him for it. This was great for Glenn because he and Michael were very competitive, and that meant he always beat Michael in bowling. Glenn and Michael actually had fun with their girlfriends, and it was days like these that they were reminded that Holly was just a pretty face, and they made the right choice in choosing their current partners. Glenn and Adriana were growing closer every day. Adriana came to the conclusion that she was falling in love with Glenn. Glenn felt love for Adriana. There was no denying that, however. He couldn't shake the thought of Holly in the back of his mind as he was kissing Adriana. Adriana was better suited for him, but he knew that being with Holly would be unpredictable and exciting. He felt that his relationship was the safe option and sometimes frankly boring. Heidi and Michael were the definition of high school sweethearts. They were perfect for each other, and everyone at school thought so. They were extremely in love and were already fully planning their futures as one. Heidi felt comfortable in her relationship with Michael. He made her laugh and reminded her how special she was and their connection was. She used to think it was silly to be so closed off to other boys at such a young age, but she was certain that Michael was the person she should spend her life with. When her sisters went on dates with their boyfriends, Holly worked on her ballet. It annoyed her that she wasn't invited to go out with them. She thought her sisters were so insecure that they had to exclude her from certain events. This made Holly feel powerful. She liked that her meaningless flirting with the boys was making her sisters sweat. That was most of the reason she did this in the first place. She wanted them to know that if she actually pursued either boy, she could have them. Matthias baked the younger twins a birthday cake because they were aging into toddlers. Matty could hardly believe that their youngest children were about to be toddlers. He felt like time was moving too quickly, and he wished he could press pause and enjoy his children being little just for a little bit longer. Matty took his wife in his arms, and they shared an intimate moment together in the kitchen before having to retrieve the twins from their room. Most couples would plateau in romance by this point in their marriage, but not Matty and Betsy. They only got closer and more affectionate with age. Their love stood the test of time and only got stronger. They held each other closer in these bittersweet moments. Part of them were excited to have more time to spend in their marriage, but the other part of them wished they had more time with their children. Their girls would soon be moving out and become young adults. Time was a thief. The family gathered in the beau's room and loved on the infants and celebrated their big day. Heidi especially was very excited for her youngest siblings to get older. She had such a close relationship with Max and hoped that as the twins got older, relationships with them would also form. Betsy held her little Karen, and she hoped that her developmental delays would get better as a toddler. She wanted nothing but the best for her girl, and Karen having potential issues was really scary for the family. Karen's toddler trait is that she is clingy. Matty held his not-so-little Kevin and helped him blow out his candles. Matty couldn't wait to see what kind of beau Kevin would grow to be. He hoped Kevin and Max would be close as brothers and they all could spend time together. Kevin's toddler trait is that he is fussy. Holly became bored with the calm dynamic of the friend group, so she decided to stir the pot a little bit. While Heidi was swinging on the swing set, Holly started to flirt with Michael. She complimented his growing muscles and suggested that they should go swim in the pool together so she could see his muscles up close and personal. Michael's cheeks flushed with flattery, but tried to gently turn down Holly's advances but got flustered. Even if he was in love with Heidi, Holly was an attractive girl and was intimidating to turn down. Heidi yelled at her twin to leave her boyfriend alone. She called her attention-seeking and dense if she ever thought Michael would look in her direction again. Holly said nothing but plastered a smug look on her face. Satisfied with the drama she had caused, Heidi felt empowered by standing up to her sisters so fiercely and invited Michael to sneak into the bathroom together. Heidi had felt ready for a long time to give her flower to Michael, but losing it to him in that moment was more about marking her territory. Michael was her boyfriend and the love of her life. She wanted to remind Michael of that the next time that Holly tried to flirt with him, despite her reasoning behind it. Their first time together was magical and something she would never forget. A few weeks later, the friend group of 5 went to the roller rink for a fun outing together. They had cut class for the first time ever, and it was both liberating and nerve-wracking for Heidi and Audrey. Anna, because this was the first time they ever broke the rules. Holly skipped school often, so this was just another day for her, but had fun regardless. None of them were particularly skilled in roller skating, so it was a fun afternoon of wipeouts and looking like newborn deer on the skates. For Glenn in particular, it would be a day he would never forget. When Glenn excused himself to the restroom and Adriana was distracted with ordering food, Holly snuck to the restrooms to wait for Glenn. She pulled out all of her best flirting tactics when he emerged from the restroom. She told him that she had been interested in him for a long time now, and wanted to see where things could go. Glenn told her that he was in a committed relationship with Adriana, but did not have much conviction behind it. Holly embraced him and said that she could keep a secret. Glenn tried to be strong and faithful in his relationship, but Holly's seduction was too powerful. Holly closed the distance between them and locked her lips with Glenn's. The kiss was short, but it told them both everything they needed to know. There was a definite spark between them and they wanted to explore it. Matty prepared a delicious meal for his family and their special guests. Now that 2 of their girls were in serious relationships, he and Betsy wanted to get to know the boys on a more personal level. Matty especially wanted to investigate whether or not the boys were good enough for their daughters. Glenn greeted his girlfriend with a passionate kiss. He had felt guilty for cheating on Adriana with her sister. He enjoyed being in a relationship with Adriana and liked the connection they had. However, the need to explore his connection with Holly would gnaw at him endlessly if he did not continue to pursue it. So, for now, he would continue to date Adriana while secretly exploring his spark with Holly. The dinner is awkwardly quiet. Matty was uncharacteristically tense around the bows. Michael was so antsy and nervous that he could not sit down. Betsy noticed that Holly subtly winked at Glenn from inside the kitchen and shouted a vague command for Holly to behave herself. Matty really liked Michael and has always thought that he was a good kid. Having known him for years, Matty did not get a good first impression on Glenn, however. So much so that by the time Glenn joined them at the table, Matty got up from the table and excused himself from the dinner entirely. Glenn tried to charm Betsy, but she saw right through him given, as she had just seen he and Holly flirting from afar. Adriana and Heidi are oblivious to any of the tension and boosted each other up about how well the dinner was going. Holly snickered silently next to them at how naive they were. While Heidi, Adriana, and Michael cleaned up the dishes, Glenn excused himself to the bathroom. Instead, he snuck out to the garage to make out with Holly. The tension between the two had been growing throughout dinner, and the secrecy of it all made it all the more steamy. While Glenn had a stronger emotional connection to Adriana, he had a much stronger physical connection with Holly. Holly had recently been appointed as head cheerleader at the start of junior year. During football season, the head cheerleader was asked to perform a solo routine. It was moments like these that Holly thrived in. She loved having all eyes on her, marveling over her beauty and expertise in dance. She had decided in that moment that she was destined to be a performer. Whether that was dance or singing, she wanted to have the spotlight on her. People were transfixed on her and she wanted to chase that feeling. Holly's feelings on Heidi are slowly changing. She realized that her twin wasn't as bad as she always painted her out to be. She still found her unbearably annoying and a killjoy, but she was kind, and that was one trait there Holly envied. No matter how mean she was to Heidi, her sister still treated her with kindness. Sometimes Holly wished she could start over and make a friend out of Heidi instead of a foe.